You're watching Morning at NTV.
Welcome back and many thanks for staying with us right here on Morning at NTV with me, Romeo Busiku. Let's get into our next conversation of the day. We are talking about why generally young people are angry all over the world. Now, around the world, young people are up in arms protesting just about everything. There are over 10 protests going on around the world. In Uganda, a university protest about a fee increment turned into a protest for free university education. Analysts believe that these young people are protesting because they believe they served the short end of the stick, being asked to pay for expensive university education that those who are telling them to go for free. Now, jobs are scarce and the state, young people are being called lazy for asking for their dues. To discuss this and more, we have two impressive young people to talk to us on why young people are up in arms around the world with an eye on Uganda. We have Lawel Muhwezi, the student leader at Makerere University, and Lydia Namayengo, the regional coordinator of the People Power Movement for the Kampala metropolitan area, and they join me right now here at the balcony of the Serena. Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lydia. How's it going?
We're fine. How are you?
You're well.
Yeah.
You don't look so well.
I'm well.
I thought maybe it's because of the contents of what I was reading. Young people generally being angry all over the world. Could you help us understand this? What is happening? Why are we seeing this demographic being so angry when it comes to politics? Why are young people embracing protests all over the world, not just Makerere University?
Of course, good morning, Uganda. My name is Lydia Namayengo, and I am actually here to talk about the young people. Why are they hungry? Why are they angry? First of all, you need to understand that the graphics have changed.
Yeah.
First of all, majority of the people all over the world, globally, are actually young people. So because they are young people, it's upon them to engage in the leadership and the politics of their countries. So you would actually be very surprised if the young people are not participating and actually eagerly waiting to see what happens up in the leadership.
So it's a good thing that they're protesting.
First of all, it's a good thing because they are engaging, and protesting, that's actually a strike and demonstration.
Yeah.
And every country that actually has democracy, everybody has a right to demonstrate and freely participate in a peaceful demonstration. So if a demonstration is actually a very peaceful one, they are not actually abusing any right. It's actually their right to engage in a peaceful demonstration. But on the other hand, strikes are an indicator that there has not been dialogue, there has not been any window for the young people to engage with the leaders in power, probably to be able to deliver their services, or actually to be able to listen to them, their needs, their demands, and their issues are actually raising on point. Because you realize that many of these countries have very many good policies, like Uganda, of course. It has very many good policies. It has institutions like the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Straight Women, which actually houses the Ministry of Youth. It has very good laws, like the National Youth Council Act, that talks about the young people engaging in leadership. It has also very many good leaders who are actually existing. But they have not been able to listen to the young people's needs and desires and actually issues that they're raising.
Is picketing the only way that young people can be listened to? Is it the only way that young people can be heard? Through protesting?
Protesting is, of course, not the only way that young people can be heard, but currently you realize that leaders have shut up their ears. They never want to listen to people speaking softly. They never want to listen to people speaking in a soft manner, in a dialogue way. They never want to come and sit down with the students and listen to them. They never want to come and sit down to the young people. Young people have been speaking. They've been speaking on social media. They've been speaking everywhere, in their communities, in their areas where they actually are. But they have not been able to get the listening ear. And because you have a dictatorship in power, what a dictator listens to most is you being able to stage up a fight. When you stage up a fight, they will actually come up and respond. Of course, they won't be able to respond positively towards your needs and desires, but that is when they wake up to respond. Because increasing tuition in Makerere University has not actually begun today. It has always been every other time, every other semester, it's actually been able to increase. But the leaders are not listening. Yet you realize that these young people are not just striking for the sake of striking. They are striking because they come from poor families.
Not striking for the sake of striking, but because they come from poor families. So poverty is the main factor driving these protests as we speak.
One of the main factors is poverty.
Yeah.
The second factor is unemployment. The third factor is human rights, because they have a right to engage, to have education. The third factor is protecting, there are other fellow students who actually are coming on board. Because, I mean, if you keep quiet one injustice in your area, that means that injustices are going to grow up, and at the of actually think that it's okay to actually bring up as many injustices as much as you can. So you actually realize that there are a number of factors that these young people are actually raising that government doesn't want to listen to.
Lydia Namayengo, she's the regional coordinator for the People Power movement representing the Kampala metropolitan area. And like she's saying, poverty is one of the major factors that has driven most of these protests. Not only poverty, but also unemployment in this country and the major egregious human rights violations that have prompted these protests, like the ones you've seen right there at Makerere University. Most of the students are saying fees should not just, drop but go away in their entirety. One of the student leaders, Lawal Muhwezi, is with us right here on set, right here at the Serena balcony. Let's engage him and see what he has to say. Lawal,
yes.
You've heard what Lydia has to say.
Yes.
Had to say. She
Yes,
was
yes,
basically speaking in verbatim. Yet one of the people who have been at the forefront,
Yeah.
or who have had to bear the brunt of police brutality, human rights violations, you're here sitting in our midst. So we would like to know, why are young people right now angry, starting with you right there at Makerere University?
Thank you very much. You see, when it comes to anger, especially with Makerere University and with questions unanswered, we have had students who rose up
you can hold it around here. Yeah.
fought for what they think is just. Like she says, education is supposed to be basic, it's supposed to be a fundamental right to some extent. It's supposed to be affordable since it's a public university. Now, hundreds of students threw themselves on the streets. They were badly beaten up, and the questions remain unanswered. The government itself has refused to answer to their cries. Instead, they come up with responses that don't address the problem. They say they compare us with private institutions. They compare us to other countries which are relatively better than Uganda. So why should these people not be angry? I mean, these are students who threw themselves on the streets. They were wounded, they were tear gas, brutalized. And here we are asking ourselves, why are people angry? That is basically it. The questions they raise are never answered. And like she said, questions of fundamental rights. Now, I'll tell you something. You might anger me or you might anger anyone, but as long as you give them a chance to be heard, that somehow elevates the situation. But these are people who have cries, but even when they are raised, they are beaten up and their questions not heard. I can imagine what would happen. I was telling my friend yesterday that if Museveni of then was to come and pass by recruiting people to go within the bush, Makerere would remain half. Because people are there, they struggled, they have not been heard, and they are just there like wounded lions. And that is basically why the youth are angry, because they have a lot of things they're asking for, but the governments in charge are not doing what they're supposed to do. The question of unemployment. Now, the president Somoni says that it is because of the free education that we have a lot of unemployment. But you see, the issue of frustration and anger is an issue that is in your head. It's an issue of conscience. Therefore, the frustration one gets after going through education and suffering and then not getting a job is the same as that of someone who has not gone to school, because they look at the world as unfair. They look at no future. They are frustrated. And therefore, with or without education, as long as there is no provision of public services, as long as there is no transparency, as long as people cannot be heard, the youth are going to remain angry, and that is basically why they're angry. The bigger question is that the youth are not heard. Their questions, the challenges they are facing are never answered by those that are supposed to answer them. And therefore, unless those in charge do that, the youth are going to remain angry. And we cannot all predict what happens when generally the biggest share of the population, I mean the youth are the majority population, around 75 to 80, and therefore if majority are angry, we don't know what is the future of this nation, because it's always not nice at the end of the day. The product of anger is not the most desirable.
It's not the most desirable indeed. And you think striking is the only remedy to solve your solutions at this point?
You see, anger, just like frustration, do not come in one day. They are piled up. The idea is that people continue to raise their voices. They continue the struggle to be heard in ways that are all acceptable, very peaceful, but they are never heard. Like she says, people have advocated, Makerere students have engaged the administration and government, but these things are never answered. And this leaves them with no option but to do things, make sure they are heard, and that includes putting on boots, going on the streets, fighting, because that is the voice seemingly.
So now you're telling me students, vis-a-vis young people, have exhausted all the other legal avenues and failed to be heard. Exactly. That's why they're picketing.
Exactly. It's as simple as that.
Lydia, let me engage you for a second. The Archbishop, Stanley Ntagali, says that politicians or political organizations, just such as the People Power Movement, are misusing or misleading young people to embrace these protests. What do you have to say about that? Are you taking advantage of these young people because of their suffering? So you're trying to capitalize on that and recruit them into your organizations, political organizations. Is it true?
First of all, Romeo, the issue of concerns affecting the students in Makerere has not begun yesterday. People Power is just 2 years old, and Makerere has been on strikes and demonstrations every other year, ever since Makerere was born as a university in Uganda. So you cannot, as an archbishop, come out and tell Ugandans that actually it's People Power that's actually fueling them to go and engage in a protest. That is actually a very wrong statement, and I think Archbishop must come out and apologize to Ugandans and also to these young people. If a mother who is down there in the village, who is out there in the community, that has actually sold her land to pay a 3 years installment of university tuition for his son, and he knows he has cleared, and he now comes up and they tell you that you actually have a 15% increment every other semester after me selling my land off, and then you actually come them and tell them that, you know what, you have to pay an increment. This is actually what the students are fighting for. It is not a question of People Power, because People Power came yesterday. People Power is actually just an igniting factor that is showing young people and telling them, please stand up for your rights, come up and say yes, come up and say no to injustices.
So what
but these issues have been there. A woman in the village who has sold her land, a man in the village who has had a village meeting or a clan meeting to pay school fees for a child in the university does not have to know whether there's People Power or not. It's a question of our students having affordable education. It's a question of our country being able to put up policies that can favor every person to engage in this country and have equal opportunities as much as they can. So that allegation put on People Power is actually a wrong perspective and a wrong allegation, because young people are facing the same problems, even within universities and outside universities with People Power, or actually within NRM. It's almost the same case. All of us need
So
education.
this has nothing to do with political organizations or politicians, because the problems have existed before the People Power Movement or even Besigye.
Even when the NRM had just come into power, when it was a very good government, there was still protests against increase of tuition fees in the Makerere University. Even when the NRM actually had just gotten power, they were still praising it. There were still strikes and demonstrations in Makerere University. So I would think that the government and Archbishop should just sit down and actually look at how they can make this university more affordable. I was actually very perturbed when a whole Minister of Education came up and said, if you cannot afford Makerere, please go to UCU. She actually reminds of Marie Antoinette of France. You cannot tell a poor mother who has actually taken her child to a very poor school and groomed them to say, you will go to a public university, tempt them, and then tell them to actually go to a private, which is more expensive.
If they cannot
That
afford
is not-
bread, they should get cake.
That
The
is
words of
actually
Marie
an abuse.
Antoinette.
That's an abuse to the young people of this country. That's an abuse to the community of this country, Uganda. That's an abuse to the poor people who are out there in the communities who are not actually willing, able to afford, but they want to have their children go to school and have an education.
Indeed, Lydia, I concur with you when you say these problems have actually existed
Yes,
for a
they
long
won't come
time.
yesterday because people are there 2
Even
years.
before Besigye
Yes.
showed interest in the presidency in 2001, these problems were there.
They were
But
there.
after he showed interest and he was talking about the problems that were affecting people, we saw government come out to say, no, you're inciting the people by talking about the problems that are affecting them. So many human rights organizations and activists jumped on that, saying, no, these politicians are not trying to incite the public, but to talk about the issues that are already existent in society. But then, last week, the People Power Movement launched a student wing at Makerere University. And you playing to the tunes of the First Lady, who is accusing the politicians right there of using students to fight their political battles. Now, if you go ahead and launch a student wing, and you actually playing into her game.
We are not playing into the First Lady's game. Launching of the students' movement was planned 2 months ago, even before the strikes had come on board. When People Power comes up to launch anything, it does not actually come up as overnight, you understand? It was actually something that was planned 2 months ago or 3 months ago, because mobilizing all these students from the various institutions and the young people does not come in an overnight or a fortnight or 1 week or 2 days. It's actually a plan that had been, it's work that has been going on every now and then.
Thank
so
you.
if the First
Thank
Lady
you very
comes
much,
up to
Lydia.
make an accusation,
Okay, thank you very much,
that's
Lydia.
a very wrong accusation.
So let's engage the student leader, Mr. Lowell Muhwezi. It's said that the generation is lazy. Is this your problem? Is this the reason this generation is picketing left and right?
Now, I want to say this, that the youth by the nature,
Yeah.
even biologically, they're an active group. There are people who are outgoing and strong, and therefore, even with that, from that perspective, there is no saying the youth are lazy. But maybe we could admit that the management has tried to make them lazy by blurring all the available opportunities for them. Why would you? It is also justifiable for someone to say the youth are lazy when they have not given them jobs. What do you expect them to do? But that said, I think the bigger problems that are affecting the youth are not political questions. They're questions of mismanagement. That
they are not political questions,
politically.
but questions of political mismanagement. Thank you very much, Laura.
Mismanagement itself.
Political mismanagement itself.
Not political, but mismanagement of the stakeholders themselves, especially the government in charge of these institutions.
So it's our leaders that are the problem,
this is
not
mismanagement that they're choosing to answer politically. Yes.
Lawal Mohe is a student leader at Makerere University, and Lydia Namayengo, she's the regional coordinator for the People Power Movement. We've been talking about why youth generally are angry. Right about now, as we speak, there are 10 protests all over the world, not just Uganda, only right here at Makerere University. Right about now, let me hand over to Mala Kivila, who's having our next conversation right now. Mala?